Panchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nitai Satyanandan Prabhu ki jai. I first met Nitai in September 1979. I had joined the temple just a few days before. It was Sunday. There was a knock on the door. I happened to be standing beside the door and I opened it only to realize that I didn't know what the rules were. Do we let everybody in? Do we vet them? So there was this person standing in the door all dressed in black with a black fedora hat. And he looked like one of the Beatles because he was a fan of the Beatles. And it was Nitai. And he just looked at me and I looked at him and I didn't know what to do. So he said, "Can I come in?" I went, and he just brushed past me in a gruff kind of way, like I was just wasting his time. And he came into the Sunday feast. He had been to a Sunday feast before, and he didn't leave. He went upstairs after the feast, shaved up, came down wearing saffron. And that was it. He had joined the Hare Krishnas. After that, we got to go on the Bhakta program together for. It was a 3-month program, but we were on it for a month and a half because the Christmas marathon came, and after that, none of us ever went back. So we had enough training to know how to I don't know, eat prasadam and say Hari Bol. But we went out in Harinam for the first time, and it was a fair big party. 7 devotees had joined in that week, and it was our first time out since joining. We all had shaven heads and saffron robes now. We were going out for the first time in this new manifestation. Nitai was right at the front, not a bother on him. Myself and Rasada were in the middle, trying to keep out of everyone's way. At the back was Premananda, and a drunk followed the kirtan, shouting, trying to shout over the chanting, which was difficult to do. And eventually he got frustrated and he attacked Premananda. And at this time, a ripple had gone through the kirtan right up to the front that there was something happening at the back. And Nitai was playing kartals. I think something he didn't usually do. And he came down wielding the kartals. This guy had started to punch Premananda. The rest of us were shocked and stunned, and we're all standing back. Nitai came right through the lot of us, wielding the kartals, and whacked the guy with the kartals. And the fella fell on the floor, and he picked up Premananda, and we all went on our merry way. And there was a whole crowd around, saying, "Oh, leave the Krishnas alone! Leave the Krishnas alone to this drunk." As in Ireland, the way it goes, everyone goes with the downtrodden. And then as soon as Nitai hit him, and the guy fell to the ground, and Nitai gave him a few kicks as well, and the crowd started going, "Leave that poor drunk alone! Leave that poor drunk alone!" So we nearly had to pull Nitai off him. And I asked him afterwards, this was only weeks after we joined, I asked him afterwards, I said, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "Because he attacked a devotee, and this devotee wasn't going to defend himself, and I had to defend him." And he just felt this, I felt this anger come up in me. I don't know where it came from, and I just had to do it. I was really struck by that, because I think few of us have ever seen Nitai angry. I've seen him angry a few times. But that was the most spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. And he only used it to defend the devotee. After that, we travelled together quite a lot. I don't know how it happened, but we were all on different travelling Sankirtan parties. Usually there were 3 people to a party, but for some reason or other, Nitai and I were chosen, and it was only the 2 of us. So we travelled around in a van all over Ireland, and got to know each other very well. All our ways and our foibles. We were actually a strange combination, like chalk and cheese. I used to have a very regimented program, and this time we do this, this time we do this. At 8 o'clock every morning, 8 o'clock on the dot, we'd finished breakfast, everything was packed up, and we would drive out and go to the place we were going to do Sankirtan. And at 8 o'clock every morning, invariably, Nitai had to go to the toilet. So this was the odd couple. But I remember one time uh, we were burning about something, and I was a bit annoyed with him. So I said, Nitai, you do know that everyone thinks you're stubborn, right? And he said, yes, I do. But I'm going to use it in Krishna's service. And I said, how are you going to do that? And he said, I'm going to be a brahmachari. I'm going to be a real brahmachari. And I must say, Nitai became a real brahmachari. And it was only years later when speaking with Keshava, my late wife, she said Nitai is a real brahmachari. And I remembered him saying this, and I said, how do you know? Why are you saying he's a real brahmachari? And she said, if you want to know a real brahmachari, ask the ladies. There's no vibe off him at all. There's no man-woman thing going on. Women feel relaxed in his company. He's just there. And I was that, wow, okay. He did it. He made it. He really stuck to his guns and did that. And that's quite a commitment. After Sankirtan, he stopped doing Sankirtan for some time. He was a cook in Glengariff. We had a farm in Glengariff in County Cork, way down the southwest of Ireland, a beautiful, beautiful spot. And Nitai was the cook on the farm. And it was a bit of a failure because the 1 o'clock lunch appeared every day at 4 or maybe 4:30, maybe 3:30 if you're lucky. So it didn't quite work out. And he was sent to Belfast to be a pujari. I saw him on the stairs of our temple in Wellington Park in Belfast. I was running up the stairs to go to a meeting. Nitai was at the bottom, and we passed a few words. I came out of the meeting 10 minutes later, and Nitai was at the top of the first flight of stairs. And I said, Nitai, has it taken you 10 minutes to get up the stairs? And he said, well, that's nothing. And he did his usual self-deprecatory little speech that he gave all of us regularly. But I realized there was something wrong. And I started to ask him about it. And he had great difficulty moving. And he hadn't said it to anyone. And you all have the experience. This was Nitai's way. He didn't want to put anyone into inconvenience. So I spoke with Dhananjaya, and we encouraged him, shall I say forced him to go to the doctor. And he ended up in hospital for 2 weeks. And he was diagnosed with acute arthritis, or chronic arthritis, and it was serious. And we used to visit him and bring him prasadam. Again, he was so didn't want to put us into difficulty. Oh, please, oh no, don't think of anything. But he figured out with the help of a naturopath in Belfast how to take care of himself, and didn't take medicines for it, and kept himself mobile for years and years afterwards. We used to, in the Belfast temple, well, there were troubles in Ireland, shall we call it? There were the troubles of the kind of the IRA and that whole area, a time that was called the Troubles. But there were also troubles in ISKCON politics, and at one fateful stage, everyone left the temple, and there was only Keshava and Nitai and myself. And then a devotee called Steve McSherry used to come as well. He had been a bhakta in the temple. And we were there. There were more deities than there were devotees. Keshav and I had been outside the temple, and we moved back in just to stabilize the situation. And we started to work together purposefully to try and save the temple and maintain the temple, but also try and create an atmosphere in the temple that we could all work with. And one thing was, there were so few devotees that all the cultural restrictions of ISKCON at the time, and particularly the position of women, which wasn't at all very favourable, we had to question that, because we needed everybody, all hands on deck. It didn't matter what your gender was, what your caste or creed was. We needed everyone's help. So we wanted to create a community that would attract and nurture everybody. And at a time when women didn't give classes, didn't lead kirtans, didn't have management positions, weren't head pujaris or temple presidents, all of that happened. We had to encourage that, and we got the blessings of Satsvarup Maharaj, Bhakti Charu Swami, Mukunda Goswami, so many people really tried to encourage us in whatever we did. But the thinking behind that is the reason why we were able to do seminars in England and in Europe and in America. And that laid the basis of women accepting positions of authority in ISKCON, of women standing side by side, not at the back, of women giving classes, of leading kirtans. And a lot of that was done with a brahmachari, Nitai Sachinandan. Nitai and Keshava were the two intellectuals, shall we say, behind that, and it started in the Belfast Temple. It was a whole wave of rethinking how we treat devotees. And we wanted to make the Belfast Temple a criticism-free zone, which means that we didn't criticize anyone, to create a nice atmosphere. Unfortunately, some people took it that we didn't want to be criticized. So even that became political. It was quite funny. And Nitai and I used to laugh at that. We used to meet every week. We'd sit down and we'd read the Krishna book together, maybe twice a week sometimes. And these were lovely sessions. He was such wonderful Sangha. He was such a thoughtful, intelligent person. He came across as so simple, yet he influenced the whole world of ISKCON and its culture. and he influenced me very profoundly. We were best friends. We could talk about anything. He would critique me openly, frankly, and always to my benefit. And I more and more found less and less to be able to critique him about it all. I remember one occasion we were reading the Krishna book together, and the book was open on the desk, and there was a little bug, tiny little bug going across the page. And we started to reflect on how we had changed so much, that previously we would kill flies or insects or something like that. Some bug would just kind of go like that and we wouldn't think about it. And now this bug going across the page, we would do everything in our power to save this bug. And we were talking to each other about it and saying how Valmiki was like that, the hunter, and Mugrari the hunter, and he changed. And we were going back and forth, congratulating ourselves essentially. And eventually Nitai picked up the book and said, well, we better end our session, and went, boom. Ooh, end of insect. And we both felt pretty bad. We were both exposed. But these sessions were, they weren't just about reading the Krishna book. They were a sangha. I was associating with someone who was enlightened, who was very thoughtful, who was unafraid, very able to give the feedback necessary, but given in such a gentlemanly way, in such a kind way. He didn't want to upset anyone, but he saw everything. And there was one particular time when everyone was leaving the temple at that time. The wave of thinking in ISKCON Ireland at the time was everyone should be married. There should be no brahmacharis. To be a brahmachari is to be irresponsible. So devotees had been brahmacharis and they wanted to get married, and that was fine, but they felt that they had to come up with this philosophical perspective as well. But unfortunately, Nitai became the focus of this attack, because he was one of the few brahmacharis in the country. Nearly everybody else was now going out and getting married. So his tenure in the temple was irresponsible because he was hiding away from the world. He wasn't facing the world. He wasn't engaging with the world. Therefore, he would be not a good preacher and not able to do appropriate service. So he's a bad example to society. So this was the talk that was going on. So in one of our sessions, I said to Nitai, I just wanted him to know that this was going on, wanted to hear it from a loving source. So I said, Nitai, you know what's being said, all the stuff that's going on, but people are singling you out as being the poster child of the worst example. And Nitai smiled and he said, yes, yes, I know. He said, but their critique is that I'm not ambitious, and that was one of their critiques. He said, but I'm more ambitious than they are. And I said, how do you figure that? He said, because I want to be a pure devotee, and I'm doing everything in my power to do that. And they don't know what you have to do to be a pure devotee in the same way. And I was really struck that he was only sharing that with me. He wasn't trying to be arrogant or proud. He was being factual. He understood what he was doing, that to be a pure devotee, for him, this is what you had to do. And no one else understood what he had to do to be a pure devotee. And so I was very struck by that. And it didn't take long of reflection before I realized that Nitai was a pure devotee. And I don't say that lightly, because I say that about very few people that I meet. But if we look at the balance of Nitai's life, he took to Krishna consciousness in such a pure way. His intention was pure. That's Bhagavad Gita 1:1. It's about intention. His actions were pure. His words were so calibrated, so careful, so kind. He was so humble and self-deprecating, yet he knew exactly who he was. And we rarely meet someone who sets such a high bar for us, who sets such a good example. And Nitai Satyanandan in ISKCON Ireland, one of us at least became a pure devotee. And I think that's something we can all celebrate. And a pure devotee and a friend. He was a friend to us all. There's no doubt about that. He wasn't inimical towards anyone. He was full of compassion in his heart, very tolerant and peaceful in himself. And all of these are exactly the characteristics of a sadhu. So Nitai Satyanandan was a sadhu, an Irish sadhu. And we can all be so grateful that we had his friendship and his association. Nitai Satyanandan Prabhu ki Jai. Hari Hari. Thank you so much for this opportunity to praise him. Hare Krishna.